As everyone well knows, it's been a strange and tumultuous season, one in which we have rarely known what to do and how to do it, even a week into the future. My name is Chad Scruggs, and I serve as one of the pastors at Covenant Presbyterian Church in Nashville, Tennessee. And like many of you, I'm sure, at our church, we are so accustomed to goal setting and ministry planning, assuming a somewhat predictable calendar 6 months, 12 months, even 18 months out. And the Lord has completely taken that away from us in this season. And as a blessing, to be sure, it's forced us into more of a daily dependence on Christ for the wisdom, the patience, the courage, and endurance to navigate the moment at hand, even while the future remains veiled to us. One of the things that occurred to me early on in this pandemic is that the uncertainty of the future is probably much more akin to how most Christians throughout history have lived out their discipleship. And so when the Apostle Paul writes in Philippians 4:8, when he encourages us to meditate on things that are praiseworthy and commendable and honest and excellent and true, those early believers were being challenged to see the hand of God's grace at work in the midst of their own fragility and uncertainty, bearing them up for a future that remained veiled to them as well. So I'd love to share with you just for a moment some of the praiseworthy things that I think our church family has been thinking about, stirring us to give thanks to God. That is how we've seen God's grace for us in the midst of this pandemic. The first, pretty simply, is for our health. So our church was at the center of an outbreak in mid-March, very early on, just as the coronavirus was grinding our civic life to a halt. We had a large number of the early cases in our city, in Nashville. And so while many churches were preparing for medical possibilities, perhaps even eventualities, we were right there in the thick of it very early on. And it was humbling. We were quarantined. And so we felt very powerless as a church body to do even the simple things that you would do with medical emergencies, like visit people and bring meals, etc. But we did pray. And thankfully, the Lord answered our prayers so that all of our members have recovered. We've seen God's healing mercy at work in our congregation, even in the midst of our own powerlessness. The second thing that I'm grateful for in the midst of all that's been going on right now is just for our unity as a church family in spite of being so scattered. So if you know anything about our church, you may know that we have a beautiful building that God has given us to steward. But it's probably the case, as with any good gift, that we have over time become overly attached to that building, that it has become too central to our identity as a church. Well, the Lord has, like many of you, has taken away our use of our building for this season, and that has reinforced for us the fact that our church is not fancy stonework. It's our people. And in a strange way, through Zoom worship and seeing one another in our living rooms with our guards lowered, I think many of us in our own church family feel as connected as ever. Though we certainly have differences about how and when we should return, how we should handle some of the logistics in the midst of the pandemic, the Lord has really deepened our unity in the midst of those differences. And finally, for time's sake, we have also been very grateful for the diversity of gifts in our church family and for new opportunities to witness how our people exercise their vocational gifts in service to God. We have infectious disease doctors. We have strategists. We have caregivers. We have maintenance workers, stay-at-home parents. We have a few city leaders. We have teachers. We have musicians. And all of these and more have creatively mobilized in various ways to use their gifts, both in service to our church family and for our neighbors. It really has been amazing to see that when familiar structures for us have collapsed, how quickly new structures and new leaders have emerged to fill that gap, to serve God and to serve our neighbors. So I'm grateful. We're very grateful here at Covenant Presbyterian Church. None of us asked for this season. None of us prepared for this season for a pandemic in our seminary training. But we are trusting the one who knows how to give his children only good gifts. And we look forward to the mercies of another day and especially for the prospect of seeing each other in person again soon. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you've seen the Lord at work in your own life as well. God bless.